Once a military outpost, it is nothing but bones, stories, and forgotten histories and shadows that won't leave. And we're digging up one of those stories today. Welcome to the Mad Wild West channel, where we take a look at the stories that made the Wild West mad. Welcome to Arizona's Forgotten Fort. This is Camp Date Creek, and what happened here over 150 years ago is insane. So in this empty land that's here today, there's still remnants of the past of Date Creek Camp. Many civilians lived here, along with a time where they had almost 1,100 Apaches. They had a temporary reservation here, and there were about 200 soldiers stationed. Remnants of building in the old Mad Wild West. The old square heads.
Yeah.
Nails, this one, somebody looked like they had a bad day trying to nail that in. Here they are. And what's cool about this is right down here, check this out. Check out the rocks right next to it. Just the rocks, the quartz and things all over this place.
Snakes?
Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Rattlesnake, dude. Oh, man. Another call for dude wipes. This time I caught it in time.
Yeah, get sacked, boy.
Pretty scary though. You never know. That is the true venomous snake of the Mad Wild West. So this military outpost was first named Fort McPherson, after a brigadier general lost his life in the Battle of Atlanta during the Civil War. That was 1867 when they first named that. A year later, they changed it to Date Creek Camp. Now, a lot of things went on here. Basically, you have Congress, which is back over the mountain this way. That was a huge mining town. All through these mountains behind me were a lot of gold, a lot of silver, copper, and so the roads kind of came over this way. The trail for the stagecoach and supplies came from the west heading east. This was a main stop and protection point for those supplies, and they were being used in the Indian Wars. It came out of La Paz, and it would cut through here. And if you haven't seen our story on Stanton, check out Stanton, but that was a stagecoach stop. And at that point, it would head up and head north up over the mountains there, and then it would go into Prescott, where there was another fort, Fort Whipple. So they came here to protect that. There's tons of stories all over the place about this area. Now, we're gonna explore one story that is amazing and it's scary, and it happened right here. It happened right on the outside of this building. But before we get to that story, I want to give you a little idea of what was going on in the area. The Indian Wars were going, bandits, robbers were running free, and they were stealing gold from prospectors. Settlers were getting attacked by all different types of people. So this place was very unruly, and that's why it was set here. They sent the 14th Infantry to come here and actually be stationed. And there was about 200 soldiers at the time. Now they were really going after the Apache Mojaves and Yumas. And at that point, when they started the fight, had a small reservation they built here before they sent them to San Carlos Reservation. And so here at one point, they had almost 1,000 Apaches, 200 soldiers, and another scattering of civilians all throughout this area to be near the fort for protection. Now, as they ended up setting this up and going, to give you an idea of what happened, just one quick little interjection story. Wickenburg is about 20 miles kind of southeast of this place. And that was a growing population and a lot of gold in that area. One evening in this camp, a 16-year-old rode in and he told them a story that evening, early in the evening, his ranch that they were working on got attacked by Apaches. So they mounted up a small squad here and they rode down to where it was at. That young boy was the only one that escaped. And what happened, when they approached the place in Wickenburg, they found two men face first tied up against a huge saguaro cactus. And they had arrows all in them. So the cavalry started out that morning tracking these Apaches that attacked and killed everybody on this ranch. At that point, they got up to a canyon up toward the Bradshaw mountain range, and they found them, trapped them, and actually killed them all. The story goes, legend has it, that group of cavalrymen spent a day or two wandering around the area, and they actually found a hot springs, Castle Hot Springs, which you can visit today and you can check out online. beautiful place. But that is the type of operations that Date Creek Camp did to keep this whole area safe. So let's talk about what happened here one evening. So there was a captain in charge of this camp. His name was Captain Dwyer. He unfortunately had died, and they don't know the causes. He got ill for a couple days, he passed away, and he was eventually buried just over on this side in the area graveyard, which we'll talk about a little bit later. With his death, they needed to find somebody else to command this camp. Now, General Crook was in charge of the whole Arizona territory. Now, what he did is he ended up deciding to come down, finding out about his death, and bring some other people with him and talk about next steps. Before he came down, a Native American that sided with the Americans got message up to Captain Crook that as soon as he showed up at this place, that a few of the Apaches were going to ask to meet with him and go in a circle. And when they met, they would sit down, they would talk very agreeably, and as soon as they got done talking, they would roll up a cigarette. They didn't really have pipes at that time in this area to smoke. They would roll up a cigarette. So they rolled up a cigarette, and the plan was the leader of that Indian group would take a puff and pass it to General Crook. And as General Crook brought it up to his face to take a puff, the guy next to him would pull out his gun and shoot him and kill him. And then the other Indian strength would slaughter the American. General Crook took that information, and basically at that point, he decided, all right, I'm gonna do something about this, but I need some tough guys. So General Crook ended up picking out some of his toughest men, and not just from the cavalry unit. He'd take a couple cavalry guys, but he also picked out some freighters. The freighters were rough and tumble men. They were the guys that would ride these heavy, heavy wagons that were pulled with about 10 or 12 horses or mules across this desert landscape in all types of danger, whether it was weather, whether it was bandits, whether it was Native Americans, whether it was snakes, it could be anything. These guys were tough, and many of them were 49ers, former 49ers during the gold rush era of California, and they had come out here to seek more fortune. So General Crook got these guys together, told them to just kind of dress in your civilian clothes, but I want you armed to the teeth. I want guns, I want knives, I want hatchets. So they all put their stuff in there, and they were packed tight with weapons all around them. And they made their way down to Date Creek Camp right here. So General Crook and his team made their way down here. And sure enough, as they set up in one of the post rooms, get settled for the evening, they were called by a group of Apaches to have a talk with them. What they did, they ended up walking out and having a meeting in front of their building. And we believe it was this building here. So just as General Crook was told, his men met outside, and it was happening just like they said. They would have an American, an Indian, American, Indian, American, Indian, and they all sat around and they talked, and it was beautiful, just as the plan was spelled out to General Crook. At that point, sure enough, all the conversation was agreeable. The leader of this small group of Apaches rolled up a cigarette, lit it, and as he handed it to General Crook, the guy next to him pulled up a rifle out of underneath his blanket. And as he started to point it toward his head, the man sitting next to him grabbed the rifle and pulled it up in the air, and the shot was fired. So the melee ensued. The rifle's up, the shot went off, and each freighter, each American pulls out a hatchet, a knife, a gun. Everything starts going off, except the man that took the rifle was one of the biggest in the crew of the Americans. And he was actually a freighter. And instead of pulling out his knife and doing it, he grabbed the Native American Apache, grabbed his head, and started smashing it on a rock outside this building right here. And this could actually be the rock. We don't know that for sure, but it could be. But it was something like this. Smashed his head a few times and drug him by the hair and threw him on the ground and entered the melee again. And soon the knives were going into the flesh of the Native Americans. Bullets were flying. Hatchets were being buried in heads all through this area. that evening. Death. Now, the Americans killed quite a few of that group, but part of that group took another smaller group and they ran for the hills up in this direction, and they were gonna try to make their way out of this. General Crook wouldn't have any of it. He took a little time and eventually he brought them in for justice. Now, we don't know exactly what happened at that point with the rest of them. Did they hang them? Did they shoot them? Or did they just put them back in the reservations and soon had them shipped off to San Carlos? That we don't know. But one thing we do know here is this is hallowed ground. Many men and women lost their lives in this area, whether it was from disease, whether it was from banditos, from outlaws, from Apaches, anything could have gotten them. Right here, this is blood-soaked ground. All right, we are here in the area of where the graveyard was for Date Creek Camp. It's desolate, as you can see, it's flat, but they believed that between 60 and 100 people were buried here. Now that was made up of prospectors, settlers, and of course soldiers. Now when the camp shut down in 1874, they actually exhumed all of the soldiers' bodies and they moved them to the Presidio area of San Francisco. But to this day, this area, it is still filled with bodies underneath this ground of settlers and miners that are lost to time. And that is just one of probably the many stories that happened here in the Mad Wild West at Date Creek Camp. And here we are at Date Creek Camp. It used to flow down this way and go down into this canyon a lot. Whoa, whoa, whoa!
Hey there, bud. You know where you're at? You're in the Mad Wild West. Give me all your subscribers.
I don't have any subscribers.
You don't have any subscribers?
Not yet. But if you want to subscribe, punch that like button and get me out of here so I can pay this guy off in subscribers.
You're lucky I don't shoot you for dead.
I know.
I don't need no